Welcome, everybody, to Millennials Are Killing Capitalism Live. It is good to be with you today. This afternoon or evening, wherever you are, we're having a conversation that I'm really excited for. I know a lot of folks were inspired to see what was described by many as a one-day general strike across Italy back on October 3rd. Just a massive event. Obviously, we have not seen too many examples, if any, since this genocide started a couple of years ago of labor action that is that widespread across a country. This also, I think, led to the Italian government sending a frigate alongside the flotilla, which, I think we could read cynically, or be interesting to hear how our guests talk about that move. But nonetheless, it shows an incredible amount of organizing and an alignment of forces of labor with, anti-colonial, pro-Palestinian, forces opposed to genocide. And this is exactly the kind of action that we need to be looking towards as an example and thinking about how we can even go further. And so I'm really excited to have three comrades on who can, share with us a little bit of kind of how they got in Italy to that point, as well as what they're looking towards next, right? Which is, I think, all the more urgent as we see even today that, the Zionist entity is, beginning to bomb even more vigorously again in Gaza, right? Really kind of going as far as they can to tank the ceasefire that they agreed to, right? And continuing to enact genocide on the people in Palestine, people in Gaza. And so, this type of action is meaningful and urgent. And, I'm really grateful to have these guests on to talk about the organizing in Italy, where things are at, how they got there and what they're looking forward to. So, Sereen, Elena, and Simone, welcome to Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. It's great to be with you. Why don't we start with introductions, and each of you could just say a little bit about yourself and your organization. And then for people who may not know much about your organization, maybe just a little bit of kind of some of the organizing that you all have been doing, especially over the last couple of years. I'll just go kind of according to my screen. So Sereen, we'll start with you.
Yes, sure thing. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sereen from Giovani Palestinesi D'Italia. So to translate it, it's more like Palestinian youth movement from Italy. We're a Palestinian-led organization that has been organizing here in Italy since 2020. But since at the start of the genocide, we've been working around the manifestations and working alongside the unions and workers to manage to have a conscience about Palestine and why we need to have a major mobilization here in Italy. So in this past year, we've seen a lot of work on that direction. So this is for the introduction.
Yeah, thank you. Elena.
Hi, yeah, I'm Elena. I'm also part of Giovani Palestinesi D'Italia. I think Sereen highlighted the nature of the group specifically. A lot of the work that we have been focusing on is mobilization and specifically centering the Palestinian question in that kind of organizing, which has been key to creating such effective mobilizations, I think.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, Simone, can you introduce yourself and your organization?
Sono Simone, sono un militante del GAP, Gruppo Autonomo Portuali Livorno. Noi, come proprio strumento della nostra militanza, abbiamo sempre cercato di creare dei blocchi su qualsiasi nave che trasportasse merci belliche all'interno del nostro porto. Il nostro porto è molto vicino a tantissimi hub militari, uno importantissimo, la base di Camp Derby a Pisa, che ha un collegamento molto forte sia a livello ferroviario che a livello portuale con Livorno. Poi dal punto di vista invece pratico e quindi come posso dire, la mobilitazione che mettiamo in atto è praticamente abbiamo una serie di informazioni che derivano dalla nostra esperienza che ci hanno indirizzato verso alcune compagnie, linee o tratte diciamo commerciali che attenzioniamo tramite diverse applicazioni per diciamo rintracciare e tracciare quelle che sono le navi che stanno arrivando nel nostro porto, ma soprattutto per capire dopo dove vanno e prima dove erano, in modo da capire anche quella che è tutta la catena che queste merci fanno. Una volta che sappiamo quello che è la data di arrivo della nave, proviamo in tutti i modi a bloccarla. Ora, negli ultimi...
We're sorry, just to translate this part. So he introduced himself from this GAP. So it's workers in the sport that are autonomous. They have been working for this last year in the port of Livorno to identify any arms that pass in Livorno and to block the passage of said arms. The port of Livorno in itself is very important since it's highly connected to interesting areas like Camp Derby. So it's a NATO center in Pisa. So what they've been doing in this past year is seeing also the logistical connection that have been reinforced in this past year between the port and this other through the train rail system. So one other thing that they've been doing is doing research on this logistical connection so that they can identify the passage of military assets beforehand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for translating as well. Just want to say again, like I'm honored to have you all here to host this conversation. So I remember the last time, so we had a couple of representatives from GPI on many months ago now to talk about some organizing, particularly around political prisoners in Italy. And in that discussion, there was really a talk, we talked a little bit about this work that you all at GPI had kind of done and starting to work with labor, starting to get, build tighter connections to folks within unions, within, labor groups and so on. And obviously that has, borne some fruits in terms of those organizing efforts. I don't want to, of course, none of us amid a genocide want to sit and, kind of pat ourselves on the back and rest on our laurels. But I think what you all have done, is quite inspiring in this way. And so I wonder if you could just kind of talk about a little bit of that process. Like, how did you get to the point that you all are at? How do you feel about where you are, maybe a little bit in terms of organizing in these different sectors? And maybe we could talk a little bit about that, like kind of this idea of how did you get to a place where, the whole country was really shut down for a day due to the kind of efforts of the organizing that you and obviously other organizations are involved in now?
Yeah, for the political prisoners, we have this major case here in Italy that we've been working around in this years, which is about Ananya, who is a Palestinian resistant actor that have been here in Italy since 10 years. And he was living in Turkey. And that's why when he came here last year, there was an order from Israel for his extradition. But after a major fight in the juridical aspect in here in Italy, they proved that they cannot send him to Israel because there's a high chance for torture and his death. So that's one of the major wins. But what we've seen in this year is that the Italian jurisdiction doesn't want him to leave its prison. And they're obstructing every single way to prove his innocence. There's no proof that he is going, how do you say, against any law. But since it's a political tribunal, they are using every single way to repress this fight. So in this aspect, we worked with many unions just to work around this and showcase how doing a parallel between history and the partisans in World War II. So the resistance in Palestine is the same as the resistance in Italy. And in that aspect, like the resistance in Palestine as a whole, it's important to do an analysis around that and bring their fight here in Italy as well. Since one of the things that we've seen here in Italy after our national demonstration of 5th of October is that they amplified the repression system. They changed the law to so that they can stop the mobilization that has been happening here in Italy for Palestine. And so fighting for Palestine is showcasing the hypocrisy here in Italy, showing the hypocrisy in the change of the law. So it's especially for the workers here in Italy, it's important to have this connection clear so that we can see how Palestine is freeing people here in Italy, here in Europe, or in the US.
Awesome. Does any of you want to talk a little bit more about the kind of, building the connections within the worker movements and, what that process has looked like, what was already kind of, one thing I should say is like Italy has a history of radical union organizing that's much stronger than like what we have in the US. But, nonetheless, getting to a place like you were just talking about, Sereen, where people can see their own struggles connected to a struggle like Palestine is a leap for a lot of people to see. So I'm just interested, in more discussion about like that process on the worker side and organizing, and maybe Simone has some things that he can share about that.
Hai bisogno della traduzione per questa domanda? Sì, allora chiede se come in questo anno ci sia stata la possibilità di connettere la lotta dei lavoratori, dei sindacati con la lotta della Palestina, quindi se hai modo di spiegare un attimino questo processo, anche rispetto alla tua prospettiva.
Sì, certo. Allora, intanto c'è stato le condizioni del popolo palestinese negli ultimi 2 anni, come sappiamo, sono drasticamente cambiate, quindi anche drasticamente è cambiato quello che è stato la dialettica di chi da sempre purtroppo è sensibile a un certo tipo di problematica. Quindi in un momento in cui le situazioni peggioravano, i governi rimanevano silenti, o meglio, si capiva che c'era proprio un livello di disinformazione altissimo, e quindi che alcune notizie uscivano su mass media in un modo e le immagini parlavano un altro. In quel momento c'è stato un coinvolgimento di tutti quelli che sono i collettivi, i movimenti, ma anche di tutti i semplici cittadini, che si sono sentiti in dovere di mettere in pratica quello che era il loro disagio. Quindi noi, insieme a una serie di realtà sul nostro territorio, spazi sociali, collettivi studenteschi, ma non solo, ripeto, anche semplici e liberi cittadini, abbiamo iniziato una serie di assemblee cittadine pubbliche, in modo da capire come ci volevamo organizzare per affrontare questa dinamica di disagio contro quelle che erano le scelte del nostro governo. Non so, interrompetemi voi quando volete tradurre. Nel momento in cui la flottiglia è partita da varie parti d'Europa, insomma, ma in particolare per quello che ha colpito noi, è partita da Genova, una chiamata qualora il governo israeliano avesse fatto come quello che aveva promesso già prima, che la flottiglia partisse. Lì c'è stato un netto cambio di marcia proprio dell'interesse e della partecipazione pubblica a quelle che erano le mobilitazioni. Da qui ne nasce le prime grandi mobilitazioni a livello cittadino, e quindi i primi blocchi a quelle che sono state delle navi commerciali, delle navi passeggeri, scusate, e quindi il primo, diciamo, passo in avanti rispetto a quelle che erano delle semplici manifestazioni o comunque passeggiate. Lo sciopero del 22, indetto da USB, dopo la chiamata dei Portuali e dopo una riunione anche internazionale, un'assemblea internazionale dei porti che c'è stata, è stato diciamo il vero e proprio la vera e propria scintilla di quelle che poi sono stati un mese di mobilitazioni folli. Dal punto di vista territoriale noi ci siamo ritrovati per fare un blocco alle 6 di mattina, quello che doveva nascere come il solito blocco che facevamo all'esterno dell'area portuale. Era una giornata di pioggia fortissima, quindi tanta gente se ne stava andando, tanta gente stava ritornando dopo essersi cambiata perché aveva preso la pioggia, e dopo poche ore che eravamo in presidio è arrivato il corteo degli studenti. Sono arrivate 2000.
Posso tradurre?
Certo.
Aspetta, l'ultima cosa era sono arrivati gli studenti dopo. Okay. So one of the most significant aspects of the sensibilization of the workers has been obviously the worsening conditions of the Palestinian population over the past few years, like with the drastic change that's also drastically changed the dialogue. And as the situation worsened, the government still was silent. There was a understanding in general of massive levels of disinformation. The way that mass media was representing what was happening in Palestine was completely different to images that we were seeing. And I think that's a general and universal experience across the world. So this really spurred the involvement of different movements and citizens who felt need to activate themselves in the face of this horror. And in Italy, we have spazi sociali or centri sociali, which are spaces which are autonomously organized. So in different cities in Italy, we have places which are occupied and autonomously organized. And so these were important hubs where people were able to collate and speak about how they wanted to organize. So in the face of this, unions, citizens, student groups, and social centers, so these spazi sociali, started to form public citizen assemblies. And this is something that also happened in Rome. We had the Coordinamento Cittadino, which is a coordination of citizens. And there were discussions about how to understand how to organize themselves around the choices of our government, so how to respond to these things. So that's been since 2023. When the flotilla left, parted from Italy specifically, there was a very key change in the interests of the public in the way that they wanted to mobilize. There was a lot more. This became obviously a very public and visible issue in a way that was different in character to the previous 2 years, because it wasn't just it was Europeans going to obviously an important act against the siege, and this created a lot of interest. And this is when we started to see a shift in the first large public and civilian mobilizations, citizen blocks, and the first path forward from just normal demonstrations and manifestations. The strike of the 22nd, so the whole period was actually over a week. We had a strike on the 22nd of October, which was a general strike called by the USB union. And that was the crux, let's say, or the changing point that created the catalyst of this week of massive mobilizations throughout all of Italy, because it wasn't just on the 3rd. We had protests from the 22nd, when then after the 22nd, on the 25th, the Italian government sent this military warship to accompany the flotilla. And then there were in each territory, there were demonstrations, blocks of rail stations. I don't know if you saw in Milano, there were specific blocks of the main station. And Simone was talking about how in Torino they were under the rain at 6 a.m. in the morning, and people were doing shifts to block the port. So there were people coming and going, and it was a really dedicated presence. In Rome, for example, on the 1st of October, there were 30,000 people demonstrating in a spontaneous demonstration. So it was an unprecedented turnout of the public. And then he was saying how at that point the students arrived. And Simone, se vuoi continuare.
Sì, con l'arrivo degli studenti ci siamo resi conto che il sentimento della piazza, anche dopo l'ennesima assemblea che abbiamo fatto proprio fuori dal barco, era quello di alzare un po' quello che è stato fino a quel momento il livello della lotta. E quindi abbiamo deciso con un corteo di entrare all'interno del porto, quindi sorpassare quello che è un barco doganale. Una volta dentro, tra che c'eravamo, sapevamo che il giorno successivo sarebbe attraccata una nave con 160 mezzi NATO della Caterpillar, gli stessi mezzi NATO che gli USA su quella nave hanno inviato ad Israele per essere blindati e per buttare giù e spianare le case del popolo palestinese. Da lì noi abbiamo pensato di occupare la banchina per far sì che la nave non potesse proprio fisicamente attraccare e lavorare nel nostro porto. Siamo rimasti a dormire 2 notti lì, 2 giorni nei quali ci sono stati dei colloqui con la capitaneria di porto e l'autorità portuale, un po' volti a capire quelle che erano le nostre richieste, un po' a a metterci pressioni su quelli che erano gli aspetti della sicurezza e sul fatto che noi eravamo comunque in ambito portuale, che a parte il primo giorno che c'era questo sciopero generale, quindi il porto era fermo per sciopero, i giorni successivi erano giorni lavorativi, quindi noi eravamo in mezzo a delle aree operative. Quindi noi abbiamo espresso la volontà di non muoverci da lì fino al momento in cui non ci fosse stata garantita la disponibilità da parte di tutti gli enti di non far remare e non far lavorare questa nave a Livorno. E quindi dopo questa nostra, diciamo, forzatura, il prefetto, d'accordo con tutti gli enti che ho citato prima, hanno deciso di non far arrivare la nave a Livorno, e quindi abbiamo abbandonato il presidio permanente che avevamo dentro il porto, ma hanno deciso di non smantellarlo del tutto e quindi di mantenerne uno occupando quello che era un edificio subito fuori dal varco portuale.
Yes, I'll continue. So, with this mobilization going in the 22nd of September, after they reached the port, one of the things that they as they said before, they didn't want it to be just a performative act, but they entered inside the port. Inside of the port, they managed to pass through everything and reach a gate to stay there. One of the major things that they worked around is that the day after, so on the 23rd, they were expecting to reach a military ship that were carrying around thousands of vehicles for NATO. And this same ship they have been using to send military assets to Israel. So the thing that they didn't want to let this ship attract in the port, so they maintained this blockade of this gate for 2 nights and many days, just to, while maintaining all of the other ports available. This singular gate wasn't available to attract this port. In the meanwhile, they opened a dialogue with the Portugal authority and the prefecture and the mayor. So they discussed their intention to not let this ship attract. So and they were clear about their intentions. After many days, the prefecture said that this ship isn't going to stop in the port, and it was sent away. So after this, they didn't want to just leave and not leave any sign behind. So they occupied a palace near the port just to maintain attention to this ship or any other ship that can be potentially blocked.
Awesome. Should we move to the next question, or is there more to dig into there? That move. Okay. Thank you for sharing all of that and giving us all of that detail. So I think you probably touched on this a little bit, but what has been the response, I guess since then? Like there's also been, obviously there was the flotilla, which we talked about a little bit in that. And then of course the people on that flotilla were all, arrested again, and many of them very brutally, kind of tortured or, attacked in the Israeli prisons. And, not long after that, we got this sort of, ceasefire agreement, right, that went into effect, but it also seems like that won't hold up. And I think it also kind of raises the question of, whether it does or doesn't, what should we continue to do, right? And I think that's part of what I would love to hear from you all is like, how are you looking now at this moment, and trying to organize and move forward, given what you've already kind of achieved in terms of the way that you've been able to organize so far and the current realities.
I can start specifically speaking about the response to like when the flotilla was apprehended, and with the arrests of the participants in the global Simone flotilla. I think it was obviously this is during the week of the mobilizations that happened, so there was a lot of public outrage. There was very strong mobilization. It was also coming as a important, especially because the ship that was sent by Italy then left the flotilla when it arrived from 150 nautical miles away from the shore of Gaza, and abandoned, let's say, the flotilla to be apprehended by the Israeli authorities. So I think it was a moment where there was a recognition of, in a way that hadn't happened previously, of Italian complicity with the impunity that Israel is experiencing. And there were also like union members who were participating in the flotilla. So there was a significant connection as well with the workers' movements, because there were members of both GAP and CALP, the Genera. So that was a significant aspect in like worker mobilization. One of the things that we did focus on in our, let's say, the narrative for organizing, because the different Palestinian groups of Italy organized a national demonstration on the 4th of October, so following the national strike. And this was when 1 million people came to Rome and marched in the streets. So it's a massive mobilization. One of the things that was very important then was to ensure that the rhetoric and narrative of this square was concentrated on the Palestinian question and not solely on the flotilla, because over the past week and since the mobilization of the flotilla, a lot of the public or media rhetoric was around don't touch flotilla, and around specifically around this mobilization. And it was not centering so much the significance of Palestinian liberation and the motivations for which the flotilla had happened. And that was one of the things that was like very important in a response to what was happening. Also because the members of the flotilla themselves publicly said that this needs to be a focus also on what's happening in Palestine. This isn't supposed to be taking away from activism or action for Palestine. So what we tried to center, especially with the mobilization and the amount of people also who were mobilizing for the flotilla, was to recenter the Palestinian question, specifically to not lose that in the face of such politicizations. It was a really significant moment to make sure that that was also central. So yeah.
Awesome. Sereen or Simone, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I'll just add. We've talked about a couple of dates, but I wanted just to explain the major impact that this couple of weeks had in Italy for the movement, because it didn't start in the 22nd, but it was one of the major dates for the strike. Here in Italy, there has been a couple of strikes for Palestine in particular, but it was the first time that we've seen this much tension from normal citizens, not just already politicized people. And they wanted to strike for Palestine, and they wanted to not just manifest, but also to blockade. So one of the major indicator that managed to move this anger, this frustration towards the complicity of the Italian government towards the Palestinian genocide was to be able to have these organizations, unions working towards the same goal. So on the 22nd, there has been major manifestation that blockade the highways, the train stations, the ports as well. But that didn't end there, since there had been other major manifestations that just increasingly became more frequent and more frequently participated until because there was this sentiment to participate towards this. There shouldn't be any nail sent to Israel. So that's what these weeks were after. And when effectively the flotilla was stopped and detained all of the members, there had been called this emergency strike, an emergency strike that contained all of the major unions. So there has been a complete exception of this strike between all of the factors. One of the major things is that while the government wanted to just stay quiet on their complicity and negating the high effectiveness of this movement, on the other place, the contrast between what the people wanted, what the workers wanted, went even more in contrast with the government line. So while they tried to negate any effectiveness on the strike on the 3rd of October, that had reached the 2 million participants in all over Italy, like in that day, Italy had stopped working effectively. And not only that, but there had been major manifestations in all over the major cities and even the more peripheral ones. So there was no city that were left in silence towards the Palestinian genocide. And all towards like having this their attention towards the day after, since as Palestinian organizations between other Palestinian-led organizations, we have called for our national manifestation for the 4th. So it was perfect for that occasions. And that's why we reached 1 million participants in Rome alone. It was a manifestation that we haven't seen in a long time. The most important thing is that one of the major talking point about the manifestation is the solidarity to Palestinian resistance towards the stop of the genocide. So for the embargo, while the Italian government has been trying to maintain silent this aspect, it now more than ever, the Italian people have gathered how all of our territory is filled with military assets, and if we organize ourselves with that knowledge, with this organization and having this how do you say it, working together with the unions, with the students, with all of the political actors in Italy, we can manage to effectively block the military industry here in Italy that is actively contributing to the Palestinian genocide. So there's no more what we can do towards the Palestinian genocide. We have no power to stop it. Here more than ever, we can effectively say that if we unionize, there's a stop to this massacre. And as Elena said, one of the major things that we try to work around, and with the Livornese Portuals has been like the highlight of the fight, is that our work is toward Palestine. Our attention must be on Palestine, on what's happening on Gaza. All of the other thing is on the background. We just need to know what's our objective, and towards that we work to stop the Palestinian genocide. Just to add to what our conversation with Simone, one of the major thing is that we cannot stop just stopping the military assets sent to Israel, but we need to stop everything that has been sent to Israel altogether. And the only way to do that is working with all of the portual workers. But for that, I'll leave the rest for Simone. Bisogno della traduzione?
No, penso di aver capito più o meno tutto. Allora, sì, proprio in seguito al livello che avevamo raggiunto di risultato, avevamo pensato proprio dall'interno di questo presidio permanente che avevamo creato, e sempre in seguito a una serie a 2 assemblee giorno pubbliche, abbiamo posto l'attenzione sul fatto che nel nostro porto non solo circolavano armi, ma che esiste proprio un collegamento diretto tra l'economia israeliana e l'economia italiana, e quindi che col nostro lavoro noi siamo complici diretti di quello che sta succedendo in Palestina. E quindi la nostra idea, e su quello su cui abbiamo lavorato, era cercare come colpire questa economia e come provare a interromperla. Dopo il 27, mi sembra, di settembre, non vorrei dire una cavolata, era prevista l'arrivo di una nave della ZIM, la ZIM Virginia. Abbiamo chiesto aiuto ai sindacati cercando di far sì che tutelassero i lavoratori che si rifiutavano di lavorare con la nave, non perché ci fossero delle armi, ma perché semplicemente contribuisce al genocidio. E quindi come lavoratori, ma soprattutto come movimento di cittadini, ci eravamo opposti a questo traffico. Infatti il giorno che la nave è arrivata, in questo caso il prefetto e l'autorità portuale hanno comunque concesso l'arrivo della nave, perché secondo loro il commerciale poteva entrare. Noi come lavoratori portuali ci siamo imposti, e quindi abbiamo deciso di non lavorare la nave e scioperare. Al momento che la nave ha fatto ingresso nel porto, abbiamo tirato su i bracci delle gru in segno di protesta e suonato i clacson per far capire che i lavoratori erano contrari alla lavorazione della ZIM Virginia. Questo ha fatto sì che la nave effettivamente, dopo poche ore, prima della fine del turno di lavoro, abbandonasse il porto, facendo sì che questo fosse il primo caso in cui una nave commerciale israeliana veniva boicottata da una classe di lavoratori. E questo deve far capire quanto la spinta popolare e il volere territoriale può autodeterminare quello che è il traffico che circola, e quindi può effettivamente contribuire alla determinazione di un popolo che è oppresso ormai da decenni.
Vado io, Sereen. Posso tradurre? So Simone highlights a specific example of worker action in blocking a commercial ship from Torino. And I think this is a really useful example to then answer also the question you pose about thinking about the future, Jared, because it's they were having public assemblies, and with this permanent occupation in this building next to the port, they were aware of and were diffusing the information that the port was not only circulating arms, but it was a direct connection between the Italian and Israeli economy. And that with the work that they were doing, they were complicit with the genocide in Palestine. So they were working on how to find a way to interrupt this specific economy. And it was the 27th of September, there was a boat called the Zim Virginia that arrived, which the workers refused to work to allow it to dock, not because it specifically had arms, but because it was a commercial ship that was contributing to an economy that is perpetuating genocide. The boat, for the authorities, the authorities thought that it was fine for this boat to enter, but the port workers decided to strike. And because of this action, the boat didn't dock in the port, and it wasn't allowed back into Torino. So this is a concrete example of how the actions of local workers can determine the traffic of arms and an economy that supports genocide, which is something that was worked through public assemblies, through civilian participation, and through worker organizing. I think this is key to thinking about the future of such organizing, because, I mean, we've seen that the ceasefire is well, today the bombing has restarted in Gaza, and even throughout this period, there have been continuous violations and killing in the West Bank, and in bombing and assassinations in Lebanon. So it's that's in a way it was a shift of pace, but not of urgency, and a moment of reflection on how to change strategy in this specific moment, because obviously the thing that was most significant in terms of the context we're in now is how media was portraying the ceasefire. So it was really important to work against narrative and think about how to maintain momentum despite maybe civilian distraction because of how the media was representing this. So I think the concrete example of like port workers being able to mobilize, not solely because of the transfer of arms, but because of the specific support that our government is giving to a state which is a imperialist, occupying and genocidal state, shows that the organizing for Palestine is something which is connected to not only is connected to anti-imperialist organizing, but also a anti-war organizing, which is something which is like very key in Europe, because in March 2025 there passed a new bill which was to raise spending 5% of spending on rearmament. So we're in a phase where there is increased armament, and the future that is being planned for is one which is more militarized and more securitized, with harsher repressions on any kind of mobilization, and highly securitized borders as well. So it's connecting the economy of war to the specific way that the future is being planned out by European states as well. And I think connecting how the liberation of Palestine, as we said, is connected to the liberation of Europe, the liberation of the US, of any country, is really important to think about how we continue mobilizing and also continue the motivation for doing so.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's been on my mind a lot. I mean, I think that, I'm sure for you at GPI, right, that, you're organizing around Palestine and looking at things like, um, you know, um, sanctions, embargoes, like that all went way before October 7th, right? 2023. This is something that you've been organizing around for a long time. And I think, I understand the kind of impulse by some people to say, oh, like maybe the worst is over, so we don't have to, do some of these things. But I actually think we can't lose the momentum or the lessons that we've learned over the last couple of years. And I think even the fact that, Israel is violating the ceasefire and resuming bombing, right? It just demonstrates that this is not, it's not a state that is, willing to have a path of peace or to coexist with Palestinians or people in Lebanon or, other parts of the region, Yemen, et cetera, right? And I think that it's important to continue to highlight these connections and keep organizing. And, I can say that everybody that I've talked to is deeply inspired by the example of, what you all have been, doing in Italy to get to this point where you could get, millions of people showing up to actually take action that is material, and not just kind of symbolic, right? Which a lot of things are nowadays. So one question that a couple of people pose that I might ask you all is, and you've kind of talked about it a little bit, is look, there's a great history in Italy of, communists, anarchists, socialists, anti-fascist, organizing in that tradition. And there's also a history of, fascism in Italy as well, right? And, your current administration kind of draws positively upon that history, thinks of that history in a kind of positive light. And obviously this is a struggle, within Italy and Italian history. And so you were talking a little bit about the ways that your actions and the refusal of the current government in Italy to actually stand with what the people have been demanding kind of exposes to people the reality of the current Italian government. And so I'm just curious to you all about how you are thinking about that tension currently and organizing in that context. Obviously, it has its own unique history, but United States, we're dealing with a far right government too. So like these are things that we all have to kind of think about and figure out how to navigate.
Yeah, I'll try to respond to that. One of the major things that as GPI try to work around for Palestine in the Italian context, it's to show the fascist tendency that we're working around of the government. Many other political organizations, communist, anarchist, have been seeing that as well. But before the beginning of the genocide, it was a very minor voice that could manage to express this. With the beginning of the Palestinian genocide and even with the passing of the time, even more evidently showcasing the complicity of the Italian government with the genocide, it has been clear even more how this fascist tendency is accelerating to the point that they're creating new laws to repress any any way to dissent of the Italian as major thing are expressing. So when the population is expressing discomfort about this thing, like the school, the taglio dei fondi, fund cuts of schools, universities, on workplace safety, they didn't want to resolve the issues, but they just wanted to silence this. One of the major things that have woken up the people as well is the safety in workplaces, as there has been major incidents in this past years, so that it's very, very dangerous. Like the cuts of funds for that can be directly correlated to the increasing of the funds for military aspects. So here in Italy, it's very evident how all of the cuts that are from the school, from university, are directed towards military aspects. One of the things that Simone said before is that between the port of Livorno and the port or the NATO military center in Pisa, there's this tract between railway system that was highly reinforced, and it has been evident to the citizens as well. For the Palestinian question, we are seeing how even for this, there's they are trying to create the two aspects of the mobilization. One of the bad part that wants to create this disturbance and break things. Like one of the things that makes us laugh is that for the strike in Milan, there was glass that was broken in the station, and meanwhile there has been the participation of over 50,000 people. So it's funny how this glass that had been broken is more shocking than the complicity in this genocide. Meanwhile, in these days, while there's many occupations of schools, we are seeing how fascists are going and attacking students while they're expressing their dissent in this complicity and their dissatisfaction in the government. But there's no words coming to condemn these fascist thugs that are attacking students. So this dichotomy on good and bad is even more evident, and with the rampant manifestations of fascists here in Italy that are escorted by police is showing the contrast in how they manage for the manifestants for Palestine. So for this, one of the major things that we talk with other organizations, and it's evident for that, is that with these manifestations that we organize, even though they're villainized, they try to paint us as violence, that they just want chaos in Italy, that we cannot change what's happening in Palestine from here. It's even more evident how with these manifestations, our premier, our ministers, the government in itself have to take a stance for Palestine, even with the positions that are very, very bad as to contribute to this genocide, but they have to give a position. So that's why we need to keep on being on the streets to create this chaos, organized chaos, to have our voice heard and our demands heard.
Awesome. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add to that question, but I know that first of all, I know it's late there, and I appreciate you all taking the time to have this conversation. I'll just say if there's anything else that any of you want to say, kind of while we have the platform going, and kind of before we wrap up, any campaigns you want people to follow and be aware of, or and anything else.
I mean, I can talk a little bit about how we're specifically organizing in terms of moving forward. One of the campaigns we are working on, and this is in collaboration with unions and also the organization Boycott, Divest and Sanction, is on the embargo on the not just military but all goods, and the obviously the activity of the GAP in Livorno and other unions has been extremely key to this, and this is something that we want to facilitate, because this has been a lot of this mobilization has been union led. So it's thinking specifically about how can an organization be facilitating the mobilization of civilian groups and of unions, and giving direction, or giving just offering any kind of information or support that it can in any way, because we don't have the same kind of force or numbers as a union, but it's understanding the position that an organization can have within what is already available. So with the embargo, I think that's a campaign that is trying to find a way to connect and unify these different union-led mobilizations across Italy, so that there is not just Livorno blocking the port, or not just Genoa, but an information across the country about a specific boat that's going to come, and maybe it's going to try and move to a different area. So there is no chance that it can dock in Italy. So trying to close those loopholes and possibilities for any kind of merchandise to come through or leave from Italy towards Israel. And part of that is also thinking about how embargo is a specific tactic that can help with the politicization of the public and also worker politicization. So I think that's embargo has been very significant, and I think is going to be an important tactic moving forward to continue to create collaborations and to continue to unify different groups across Italy.
I love the appearance of the cat. I do want to say I'm not trying to rush you all, so I do want to make sure you all have time to share or say anything else that you wanted to say. Yeah, I mean, Simone, if there's other things too that you wanted to talk about.
Sì, è impossibile nascondere questo governo fascista, quindi credo che stia dimostrando giorno dopo giorno la sua vera faccia, e quindi stiamo vedendo come vengono diversamente trattati i manifestanti pro-PAL rispetto a tutte quelle che sono manifestazioni che vanno anche oltre quelli che sono i limiti costituzionali. Domenica abbiamo visto l'ennesima commemorazione con bracci tesi e polizia che sta a guardare, mentre in altre città manifestanti sono stati picchiati senza pudore. Mi mi rifaccio anche all'aggressione che c'è stata a Leonardo, a Genova, decine di fascisti incappucciati sono entrati all'interno di una scuola con dei ragazzini quattordicenni, hanno devastato una scuola che è un'istituzione pubblica, un posto dove i genitori mandano i bambini, i ragazzi, e devono essere al sicuro, perché quelli sono posti in cui non si può e non si deve subire un certo tipo di trattamento. I ragazzi che stavano occupando quell'edificio hanno chiamato le forze dell'ordine che non solo hanno tardato ad arrivare, ma quando sono arrivate, nonostante la segnalazione del fatto che gli aggressori fossero sempre dintorni, non si sono mobilitati. Quindi questo ci deve fare riflettere. Credo comunque che tutte queste mobilitazioni che sono state fatte con questo livello di lotta siano proprio la risposta anche a questo, a un governo che ha come uno dei primi passi fatti a livello politico vietato o penalizzato o aumentato le pene di qualsiasi forma di protesta e dissenso venisse organizzata, e l'aver portato a un livello maggiore la lotta dopo l'approvazione di questo decreto fa capire quanto noi, il popolo e i movimenti dal basso possono reagire e resistere realmente a queste oppressioni, perché è inutile che aumentino l'oppressione quando trovano migliaia di persone in piazza. La cosa fondamentale è non cadere nel tranello della divisione tra buoni e cattivi, da chi subisce una repressione e viene dipinto come un violento. Quindi una volta che le piazze vengono analizzate con coerenza, e noi militanti dobbiamo e dovremo essere anche bravi proprio in questo, a informare le piazze di quello che sta succedendo e di cosa stiamo andando incontro, perché la forma di reazione che stanno avendo le questure dopo quei 20 giorni di mobilitazioni sono molto diverse. La repressione è aumentata nettamente, le denunce sono aumentate nettamente, e questa è una chiarissima violazione della libertà alla protesta, e quindi è fondamentale che ci sia non solo una presa di coscienza, ma anche una reazione chiara a questa forma di abuso che viene fatta nei confronti dei manifestanti.
So Simone was saying how it's at this point it's impossible to hide the fascism of this government, and it's demonstrating day after day its real face. Seeing how demonstrators who are demonstrating for Palestine are treated. There's an example of in Genova where fascists went into a school with students who were occupying the school. The school children are 14 years old, and this group of fascists destroyed the school, which is supposed to be a safe and public space. And the students called the police, and when the police arrived, they didn't do anything to penalize this group of fascists. And this is something that we specifically need to reflect on in terms of the priorities of our government and who they are representing as, good or bad in this in our country. All of the mobilizations that have been made at this level of struggle that we've seen recently are a reflection of a response to these specific forms of repression and the context that we're living in at the moment. Last year, there was a law passed, which is a decreto against the right to demonstrate. So it was a law specifically against to repress demonstrations. And this is again a example of how instead of the state recognizing that the number of people is a significant thing to take into account in terms of their policy or in terms of their positions on specific things, their choice instead is to repress a mass movement. However, the mass mobilization in response to that penalization and scaremongering shows that there is a high level of consciousness, and that people are responding to this violation of their freedom to protest.
Awesome. Thank you all, and thank you for translating. Was there anything else? Again, I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to make sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, just to incentivize the fight and the movement in other places. The Italian context is very difficult and very divided. So this phase that we've seen was the culmination of a process that we are trying to bring it back, not having this common factor that was the flotilla and the attack on the flotilla. The attention on Palestine is high, but we need to build a mobilization that can have an impact on the future. So we're expecting another general strike in the next month, and but it's a process that is not uniform, and I don't think it's going to be easy to replicate as it is in other countries, but there is going to be a key factor that is going to make an explosion of this mobilization happen in other countries, so in the US or in Europe in general. Another thing, like, that we are researching for the embargo, for example, is the assembly of the F-35 jets, that many parts that is reaching for the construction of this jet comes from the US. And I just need to do this. Like, in all over the world, there's only 3 points of constructions and assembly of the F-35 jets. Those are the same jets that are being used in Gaza to bombard, since they are very high tech and they can bring with them a lot of weight for bombs. So knowing how different countries can connect with for the construction of this particular jet is very important, so we can coordinate more. Elena said how we are trying to coordinate more on the ports of Italy. It can be also applied for other countries. We have an example for our connection in France, that they notified us how, after they blockade this ship with military assets in France, they notified the Portuals in Genova so that they cannot allow this ship to dock. And this is the beginning of this fight, so that we can effectively see how it's all interconnected, and it is possible to do something about this. Even with the ceasefire, what we saw with this massacre of Palestinian people is that it was finally we are finally see Israel, the Zionist entity as it is, and how with the bombardment of all over the area, for Syria, for Lebanon, for Iran, for Yemen. I can just make a list on how many countries Israel has bombarded, but it's the true intentions of the Zionist ideology. So we cannot continue living while the Zionist entity is still there. So our first objective is to work towards a free Palestine, so we can effectively work to liberate the world from Zionism.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And what's your cat's name?
It's Bo. I don't know. He just wanted to participate.
You know, I love it. I love when we get cats on the show. It's great. Awesome. Anything else? Please, welcome.
I just want to add to what Sereen was saying as well in terms of the possibility of organizing. I think one of the places that we started from as well is information. Like, the more information that you have, the more information you can find out about complicity, about companies that are participating in the genocide, the way that your state or the authorities that are authorizing the deliveries of weapons is a arm that you can use to raise public consciousness, to collaborate with workers. And I think it's really it's not fast work. It's about developing a research process and analyzing the information that you have available, analyzing the situation that you're in, the context that you're in, what organizations are already working, what information do they have, and how can you intervene or participate in the way that is most effective for the structure of the organizations that are available. So it's information that you can gather in a lot of different ways, find people who are already doing that, and organize with them.
Absolutely. Simone, any final thoughts?
Sì, spero vivamente che queste giornate, questi mesi di lotta, questa crescita che c'è stata, ci porti a una consapevolezza tale che non solo si risolva quella che è la crisi, la dinamica del genocidio che sta avvenendo nel popolo palestinese, ma che si abbia una vera e propria presa di coscienza che il problema è proprio del capitalismo in sé, e che se siamo arrivati a quel punto è perché viviamo in un sistema che riproporrà sempre la dinamica della guerra, della ricostruzione, dell'occupazione di territori per lo sfruttamento. Quindi da questo ragionamento noi dobbiamo in primis risolvere un'emergenza che ormai dura fin da troppo, per poi riproporre un sistema che vada oltre al capitalismo, perché purtroppo non si può più far finta di niente, bisogna fare i conti con la realtà. Siamo in un sistema nei quali siamo piccole pedine all'interno di un sistema economico, e invece i popoli devono tornare a essere il motore e l'idea che spinge una nazione, e non il contrario.
To close, Simone says, I hope these months and days of struggle can allowed us to develop the consciousness that allows us to resolve the crisis that has created the genocide, but also it develops real consciousness raising in the public that the problem is a capitalist system, and that we've arrived at the point of genocide because we're in a system that proposes war as a solution to issues of resources and economic problems. In the capitalist system, we are small cogs, and this is a moment to return or arrive to a system where, in fact, the workers are the motor of social development. And that's.
I couldn't agree more. So I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you all so much for joining and for the work that you all are doing. Audience, there are ways, the Instagram accounts for both of these organizations are in the show description. Follow them. Pay attention to the work that they're doing. I hope that you all will come back on. I was saying to you before we started that, we did the thing last year, and or maybe early this year. I don't know what time is anymore, but when this happened, when we were seeing these amazing mobilizations and strikes in Italy, I was like, oh, I know some Palestinian organizers in Italy. Like, I wish I could have them, and then I couldn't find the contact information, and so I was really glad when you all emailed and said, hey, we want to come on and have a conversation about this. And I just want to say to all of you that anytime, always just honored and grateful to be able to have conversation with you and to hear about the work that you're doing. Yeah, solidarity to you, best, not even luck, but I wish you the best in your struggles, and in the work that you're doing. And I think that it is an example, even if people might feel like, oh, we're far away from reaching that type of struggle where they are. I think what you were talking about in terms of the step-by-step process of, continuing to see what organizations you can work with, what resources you have, what power you can build, and assessing the area around you to see what are the key points that you might be able to intervene, is an approach that we can all take. And so I just thank you very much, and really appreciate you coming on and sharing the work that you all are doing again. Yeah, free Palestine.
Thank you so much for having us. Free Palestine.
Thank you so much. Free Palestine.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.